So I wanted to continue my series about the iconic wines of the world by talking about perhaps the summum of white Burgundy, and certainly the most extravagant sort of explosion in terms of price in the wine market in the last 2-3 years, Domaine Dauphiné. So I've got a bottle of 2007 Domaine Dauphiné Puligny Montrachet Henri Richard open in front of me. And you know what makes this such a coveted wine? I think for me, they absolutely are some of the most exciting wines made in the world, and every time I taste them, it's a special moment. So, you know, there are a lot of expensive wines out there that you taste and you think, okay, what's all the fuss about? I've never had that experience with Dauphiné. Dauphiné is always an emotional experience of thrilling proportions, and you know, the wines have a sort of concentration and intensity that's really hard to find anywhere else, and a sort of some very particular aromatic signatures that are also quite unique. So, so what is Domaine Dauphiné? Domaine Dauphiné is Lalou Bize-Leroy's personal domain, set up in Saint-Romain in an old dairy farm. It's still a functioning farm, and she actually produces extremely sought after small quantities of flour, which all the sort of artisan bakers of Paris and elsewhere in the world are sort of clamoring to get hold of. Apparently, I've never managed to get hold of any, but I do have occasionally a few bottles of the wine, which is its own compensation. And so these are all her own vineyards, majority of white vineyards. It's rather cool up in Saint-Romain, so the reds are a bit different from her Domaine Leroy reds. The fermentations are a bit slower because everything's a bit cooler, not so many tanks to heat up the wineries at Domaine Leroy. And the whites ferment in barrels. They're pressed. You know, it's actually, the funny thing is the winemaking is actually pretty classic. You know, it's old-fashioned whole cluster pressing, not much settling, so a lot of solids, and then fermentation in new barrels from François Frère, which I think contribute to that sort of toasted sesame, sort of popcorn, sort of aromatic top note that you often get in Dauphiné whites. Where does all that concentration come from then? And I think it's really the viticulture. Lalou has long been one of the pioneers of a more innovative style of viticulture in Burgundy, so not hedging the vineyards. At this stage she was rolling the canopies over on themselves. Now she has raised her trellising much higher and lets them just sort of grow up to about 2 meters high. It's incredible. Biodynamic and of course organic, so there's quite a lot of sulfur treatments done during the harvest, and I think sometimes there's a bit of, not during the harvest, rather during the growing season, I think there's sometimes perhaps a little bit of sulfur, I speculate, on the grapes, which may contribute to why they get so reductive in style often, that combined with a lot of solids, and there's just a sort of chewy textural concentration to them that is pretty unique in white Burgundy. There are a few other producers who sort of capture that effect, but honestly not that many. And with a Domaine Dauphiné white, you're as much eating the wine as you are drinking it, if that makes sense. So it can be structured, extremely structured and uncompromising, rather like a red wine, and a rather structured red wine at that, especially the higher appellations. And they generally evolve very slowly, very gracefully. I've never had an oxidized bottle of Domaine Dauphiné, touch wood. And this, on the Richard, so 7 is quite a chiseled, quite a taut vintage. On the Richard is normally quite a rich, one of the richer, rounder wines in the range. It's a vineyard, it's part of Puligny Montrachet Premier Cru La Folatière, but the previous proprietor got some topsoil that had been discarded when the highway through Sévigné-le-Beaune was constructed, and he put that topsoil in the vineyard to sort of enrich it, and was presumably denounced by some friendly and well-meaning neighbour and lost the Premier Cru appellation, but it is Premier Cru. But the interesting thing is that Lalou makes both Folatière and Henri Richard, and the Henri Richard tends to be a somewhat richer, more gourmand, fleshy, rounder expression. But in a vintage like 07, it's a perfect mix. So it's a really beautiful bottle. It's sad that, because it's such a benchmark for quality, and it really gives you a sense of what's possible and what, in some cases, what's possible and what isn't being done in Burgundy, that I wish more people were able to taste the wines, but I really don't think that's a situation that's going to resolve in a happy way anytime soon, given the way the market is going at the current time, alas.